we've been recording for a while, so welcome to the podcast. Our live podcast of all things Luke on location. You know, at some point we're going to have to change that because we're going to, I hope, we intend to continue this beyond our
Yeah,
teaching.
Ben and I were talking about a name a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
We couldn't
get anything. Yeah.
We got
we have a few more weeks to figure it out.
Okay.
So.
like 20.
Well, we're working our way through the Gospel of Luke, and we've got Ben Van Heining with us.
Welcome.
Ben's on the staff at the Clay County campus, and he's going to chime in a little bit about this subject.
Ben's first podcast ever, which is pretty cool.
So excited.
I
Hope I don't say something wrong or
I
weird.
can see the excitement.
We have for
This is it. Right
8-9 weeks now, so
It
you'll fit
hasn't
right in.
stopped.
People keep watching.
So stick to the Bible part, and you'll be okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right
let
here.
Jeff
It's
just,
boring.
yeah.
We'll never have you back, but
Right.
Oh, man.
we are in chapter 8, and we skipped chapter 7. Why did we do that?
I don't know. I was wondering the same thing.
Huh.
I've been
Well-
telling people we've been going through Luke chapter by chapter, and then I was like,
No,
but
we're not.
we haven't been.
Well, when he finished saying all these things and hearing the people, he entered Capernaum. That's the start of chapter 7. And in chapter 7, he leaves Capernaum, where we've been, his hometown, North Shore, Sea of Galilee. And he goes to Nain, which I wanted to take you guys to. I've got a little note scribbled in my Bible here. It's a 25-mile walk to Nain. And I loved that story, and I wanted to go there. That's the story where Jesus intersects the caravan of a widow who's doing a funeral procession with her son that has died, and he's touched. And so I love the story because, can I tell it anyway? See, this is a beautiful thing about the
I mean,
Bible.
sure you can.
There we go.
Go ahead.
So the procession of Jesus and this group of people, this mob of people that are anticipating miracles and gathering around for that, intersects with this funeral procession, and Jesus raises this widow's son. That is just awesome. But we couldn't go to Nain because Nain is it's in Palestinian controlled territory, and we were afraid we couldn't get out if we went in. So we didn't go to Nain, and so that takes us on through chapter 7. And we didn't intend this to be a verse by verse, chapter by chapter study of Luke anyway. We're kind of being driven by location, and the location changes in chapter 8, verse 26, by their little boat trip across the Sea of Galilee. And so they sailed into the region of the Gerasenes, okay, the Gerasenes, which is across the lake from Galilee. Where are we at?
We're on the lake.
What lake?
Sea of Galilee.
So how far did they go?
Just went across, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, you showed that map this past weekend. How
What is
far
it?
is it across?
It's a half-hour boat ride? I don't know. It
In a
just depends.
speedboat. I don't
We
know.
were in a motorized one when we were on there, so
We
that's
sat
what I'm
there.
thinking of.
What is that, 7 miles maybe?
I think
Across
that's what they
there?
say.
Okay.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
you can see it from
Mhm.
one side to the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
Particularly from up on Mount Erbal, where we were able to view down on the sea, that you can see this region of Gerasenes. What's significant about this location, though? What is Jesus doing geographically that makes this a story we need to highlight, I guess?
Well, I think the first thing that jumps out to me is that he's making a transition here from being the primarily Jewish people to now Gentile people. This is the journey that he takes. And if you rewind a little bit in chapter 8, he is overwhelmed by the needs of people. He's been teaching, preaching. He then leaves, gets on the boat, heads into the water. He falls asleep, right? Then there's this massive storm. And it says that the disciples are afraid, which, what kind of a storm does it take for professional fishermen to be afraid,
Right.
right? And so they're afraid. They go, they wake up Jesus. It says that he stands, and with his declaration, he calms the storm, which is pretty cool.
Do you remember, maybe I can't remember, trips kind of blend together, but someone said about this storm, there are geographical reasons why there could be a storm there, the Rift Valley, the other valley that intersect there, that storm could come up. But I think also someone said, well, I was there, the guy who can calm a storm can cause a storm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this is a special storm.
Yeah.
And maybe he causes this storm so he can calm this storm for the lesson that comes out of it.
Well, the thing that jumps out to me is that we make the transition in the text from the disciples asking the question, "Who is this?" to the very next thing we read is a demon-possessed man telling us who Jesus is.
Yeah.
They know him, which is crazy.
Yeah, Jesus stacks a couple of teachable moments
Absolutely.
right on top of each other, and they leave one storm to run right into another.
Yep.
And it's their reactions are going to be varied but interesting at the same time.
Yeah.
He's already healed by casting out demons from people. So he's displayed power in the spiritual realms. But in that culture, the abyss, cast into the darkness of the abyss, the sea, there was the storm. There's a spirit world connotation that he's displaying power there. He's able to call. Who is this going to calm the storm?
Mm-hmm.
Who is this that can cast out the demon?
Yeah.
He's displaying his power there. You were saying something a minute ago that kind of distract for a second. Jesus was overwhelmed by the crowds pressing in on him. That was the beginning of chapter 6. They're wanting to touch him even.
Mhm.
I watched the first part last night of the Garth Brooks life documentary on Netflix. It's actually pretty good. His introspection is good. He
Couldn't
was
pick you for a country music guy.
We won't go there. So he's on this meteoric rise of popularity. Goes from basically doing little cafes to stadium tours in a year and a half, and crowds of people gathering around. And of course, the women want to touch him. It's hard to understand. I don't get that, but because he could sing, I don't get it. But he retired at the end of that episode. I haven't seen the episode 2 yet, but he retired because he needed to get away from the people. The humanity of Jesus there, that we would think that it would be awesome to be famous, to be attracting crowds. It's exhausting.
Yeah, I really don't know if I want to.
Don't worry about it.
Perfect. That is completely okay.
So we get to the shore, and who's the first person that he encounters there?
Boom, demon-possessed man.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever been in a culture or maybe on a mission trip or seen some type of demon possession before?
You had mentioned earlier before we started recording that you've kind of had some experience with that.
I've been to Haiti. There's when we went out up across the mountains and down along the seashore, and we crossed a river to get to this little village where we were doing some medical work, and the church was being established and so forth. And there, in the midst of the river crossing, there's rocks for when the water's high, the rocks, and it's just kind of a washed out area. And there's a lady sitting there, and she's in a little makeshift booth, almost like a toll booth, and she's the witch doctor. And there was just this coldness, of, just even making that river crossing and passing that lady, and knowing that she's there, and knowing who we are, obviously traveling to the town, the village. There was just this coldness, and they talked about at night when you're up on the mountains, you can see fires burning around, and it's not just cooking fires, heating fires. It's celebratory voodoo fires. They're worshiping, and a good friend Steve Collins shares stories about seeing people thrashed about and thrown into the water and thrown into fire and things of that nature. The demonic possession is very oppressive there because of voodoo. I don't know, Ben, you were sharing earlier with us about traveling to the Dominican, and the people on the Dominican side, that, if you don't know, it's the island of Hispaniola has Haiti and the Dominican closed off border. What are the people there were saying?
It unnerves them to think that there could be a crossing of folks from Haiti because of the voodoo and the different evil feelings that come from that. So they totally want that separation. They were not necessarily believers in God, but definitely in opposition to evil forces. And that was very apparent, the way they dealt with that and their border security and all of that. So you could sense they believed it was real.
So why is it that in our culture, in our Western mind, like, we stay away from some of this? Like, we don't really talk about it, And really, the only reason we're talking about it is because it's in the Bible, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't have a reason to.
Yeah. Oh, right. And I don't know. I think we underestimate the nature and the intelligence of our enemy. In the fact that if somebody's possessed in our culture and that was manifested through, well, this guy's he's naked, he's able to have feats of incredible strength. We see other stories of people thrown to the ground and frothing and convulsing and things of that nature. If that manifestation was in our culture and we saw that, we in our mindset was the opposition to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the devil knows that.
Yeah.
So I think it's just as present in our world, demonic influence and demonic oppression and maybe even possession. But the devil's wise enough to mask himself in ways that we aren't immediately turned off by that and scared of it, but instead enticed.
Yeah.
Well, when I was doing research for this, like there is I hesitate to say no, but there's very little, if any, demons mentioned in the Old Testament. The last demon possession that is mentioned is Acts 16 and Acts 19. And then after that, it seems to be something that we don't hear about. And so my question for you guys is, I'd like to know your thoughts on this. Why is it that in the ministry of Jesus, there seems to be encounter after encounter of this demon possession and him encountering them?
Yeah, it almost makes you wonder if it's not intentional as a way to highlight the power of Jesus over those things. Because I think we would agree that hasn't ended, but what better way to show that Jesus has the power and authority over the darkness realm, over the enemy, than by continually bringing those instances up. Again, I don't know. I just assume that's kind of.
I think that's a
where that
possibility
goes.
of it. I think it's also the issue of the presence of Jesus turns the light on to what's really taking place behind the scenes. The things that are, again, currently out of common view today, still present, but the presence of Jesus illuminates what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I think we have those issues today. I think they get labeled as other things, and I hesitate even to talk about that because I also think there are other mental, emotional, psychological issues that are real, and I don't want to diminish mental illness in any way, but I think the devil plays more of a role in these things than we realize in our world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I do think, too, that when you see encounters with demons, when Jesus isn't present, the inability to get rid of those or to exorcise those is an impossibility without Jesus, without faith in God, and without that. So you see Jesus show up and he does what no one else has been able to do, and that displays the power of God in that moment too. So when he shows up here, the next thing we know is the demon's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus has dealt with it, and his followers are amazed at what they see, as if they hadn't been amazed by all the other things that he's done up to this point. But at this point, they're going, okay, he even has power over the demonic and the underworld, whereas other human beings and other people that would claim that could not.
Who was it? The 7 sons of Sceva
Yeah.
were the ones that tried and
Mhm.
were just absolutely humiliated and
Well, we see that in our world today, right? I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of evangelists on TV that I'll not throw names out, but there seems to be that
I didn't
they
know
have.
we were going there.
I didn't either. But I think that's really important what you said is like that we on our own don't have that power.
Right.
Jesus does.
It's very dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, there have been a few that have been outed for that very reason, that claimed all along that they could do away with demons, and they've been shown to be frauds.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the other folks that we know of, like you were talking about with televangelists. So you just know that if you're going to put on a show, you're going to be shown for what you really are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jesus gives us a pattern or his ability to do away with these things. But if any of us gets this idea that we have that same ability, we better check back and remember who's the one that controls those things.
Yeah.
It's not us for sure.
At the end of Luke 6:18 or 19, it says, he's that little summary synopsis of what Jesus has been doing. Healing, teaching, casting out demons. It says he healed all.
Right.
All. And so it wasn't just a pick and choose. It wasn't based upon their faith. I mean, it's all.
Yeah.
And so I think there's the lights on. It's Jesus.
Yeah.
He's here to prove that he's the Messiah. So he shows up on this shore. Now, geographically, we went to a place called
Kersey.
Kersey. Yeah. Sorry. And it's we go around like this, around the curve on the northeast side, and there's a little ridge there. I had never been there before I went with you two, but there's a little spot, caves up on the hillside there, where there's a monastery been built and destroyed, and all kinds of remnants of the fact that this was very early on celebrated as the place where the demon was cast out. And there's some significance about this place. It's the entrance into what was called the Decapolis, 10 Decapolis, cities of Rome. We only went to one. We went to a place called Bet Shean. But beautiful cities, powerful, opulent displays of Rome and Roman life. But that's where he's going.
Yeah.
As he enters this place. It's different than where he's been over at Capernaum, right? And you're going to highlight some of that, aren't you, on
Yeah.
the teaching? Yeah.
The interesting part about this story is that it's in three places. Luke, Matthew, and Mark all share this story, and all of them add different details. Like for instance, Matthew mentions that I believe it's Matthew mentions that there were two men. Luke does not. We don't know what happened to the second man. We don't know if he was saved. We don't know if he left. We don't know what happened. But the sheer terror that is in this man is just like, it's captivating.
Yeah.
Right? And this story, Jesus showing power, and Ben, you mentioned this, and I didn't want to cut you off earlier, but it's your first time, so
It's all right. Cut me off.
But he goes
It's all
from like the power over nature to the power over the spiritual, all in the same few verses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, within hours.
Yeah.
It's not like it's months, or he doesn't have to recharge. He just goes from controlling the weather to controlling the demons. And Satan's going, man, what am I going to do? What else can I do to throw at this guy? And I mean, even I think in some of my reading, I was looking through, and they said, Jesus had already been tempted 40 days in the desert. I mean, Satan used every tool he could out there and couldn't get Jesus. And then he throws these things out, and Jesus just says, yeah, just with the word of God, I'm going to show mastery over this. So it's a really fantastic series of events that occurs.
I love what the demon says. What's the significance there, Matt? I know you were wound up about that.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Piece
Yeah.
there. This man goes from being a madman to a missionary.
Yeah.
But the demon, that's what's interesting to me. The demon catches it first.
Yeah,
Right.
well, when it says, because he identifies Jesus as Son of the Most High God, this man is not declaring that. The demon is declaring that. Jesus asks him his name. We don't ever really get to hear the man's real name because the demon begins to speak, and he uses this word to describe himself. He says, "We are legion," and one of the accounts says, "For we are many." And so we know that Jesus then casts the evil spirits, the demonic spirits, into the pigs. Matthew says that there were 2,000 of them. So, this word, if you trace it back, legion, all the way back to what Jeff was talking about with this Roman culture, it was an army of right around 6,000 men. And the way that they fought together was unlike anything in anything in known history. They would fight shoulder to shoulder. They were close. So we know that there was either 2,000 to 6,000 demons in one man.
Yeah.
Where did they come from?
I don't know.
Hell, yeah, I suppose.
I guess.
We don't know enough to know like where these creatures are. We know they're born out of hell somewhere, and that Satan is using them as his minions. But where have they been before they met this man?
Well, see, I think that's important, Ben. I think that they're angelic beings.
Yeah,
They're created beings.
yeah,
and they say to him, don't do things to us before our time. They know their destiny,
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So they're rebelled, kicked out, and they're angels who rebelled with Satan. Where have they been? Where are they now?
Yeah.
Right.
That's a worse question,
That's
isn't it?
that's a scary question.
Well, you mentioned about there not being any in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Well, they don't need to show themselves quite as much, because as Ben mentioned a while ago, Jesus is here now, so Satan's got to put the full court attack on, what's about to occur, and I think that's an interesting thing because they've got to show up now in full force, and Jesus just flicks them away and says, "Yeah,
Well, with
that's
the
really
finger of
not
God,
that. Yeah,
he
with the
cast
finger of
them
God.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that we've looked at different interactions between demons and Jesus, and every other time Jesus warns them not to speak about him.
Yeah.
And all of a
You
sudden,
brought this up earlier.
yeah,
before
all
we
of a sudden
recorded.
in this one, he doesn't stop them.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting, now it's among the Gentiles. Is there something with the Jews and Gentiles that now Jesus is allowing them to speak because he's wanting the gospel to go out to the Gentiles? It's just a weird shift in dynamics because for so long they have not been allowed to tell anybody who he was. And now you don't see that in here. So, and
Yeah.
I think there's probably some reason why you see that the man goes on to become a missionary.
Yeah.
Because
Well, can you imagine this scene? So, 2,000 pigs on the hillside. Okay, they cast the demons into the pigs. We've been there. They go down the hill into the sea and they drowned.
Yeah.
Can you? And it says that the
Which
herdsmen,
doesn't make any sense. Can't pigs swim?
They can't swim.
They can't fly, but they can swim.
I googled it to make sure they can swim. But then the herdsmen go and they do what we would all do. They go tell everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And Matthew says that the entire town showed up to see
Yeah.
Jesus.
It's an economic disaster.
Yeah.
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 In
yeah,
that
they're
case.
probably not happy about
Right.
it either. They
Right.
just lost, 2,000 pigs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But anytime you pass by from the northern shore, Capernaum, the travel route that goes from the sea over to into Syria, anytime you pass by, you had to deal with this guy and this issue.
Yeah.
So if you're going to the Decapolis and that road,
Yeah.
you got to deal with him. He's blocking the way. And so, it's like going through the alley. Here he is. He's going to be there. Now he's not. But they're more concerned about the fact that their economy is.
Well, I mean, I
Yeah.
wrote down the title of this message to be From Maniac to Missionary. But as I studied this more, I begin to see, who's the maniac in the story really? Because this guy, the next time when the people show up, what do they see? They see a man that, as Luke says, is in his right mind, sitting
Yeah.
at the feet of Jesus.
Yeah.
And then they see this happen.
It's the
And-
townspeople.
Yeah, this says that they're afraid, and they ask
Yeah.
Jesus to leave.
It's
Yeah.
just like the Pharisees we've been looking at in these stories that are more concerned about the religious ritual and the breaking of the Sabbath than they are overwhelmed by the healing
Yeah.
that takes place. Wouldn't you have thought?
Yeah.
He's dealt with this man, this
Yeah.
issue right here. Let's listen to him. But no.
The power of God on full display, and they say to leave.
Yeah. Well, and even Jesus' disciples are they're with Jesus, and then Jesus does something, and they go, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm not certain." And we know all their names, we know their history, we know the way they died. But this man, we don't get a hint of his name. We don't get anything but the words that are amazing about it. It says he just went and did what Jesus asked him to do, and the people were amazed at his teaching.
Yeah.
You were sharing earlier
so-
with us, Ben, about how many people in Scripture are, they're unnamed.
Yeah.
They have these incredible encounters with Jesus. They're transformed, and they transform others' lives. I think of the woman at the well.
Yep.
Goes back and tells her whole town.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
and the next time Jesus comes back there's a crowd. The next time Jesus comes back here, there's a crowd.
Does Jesus
Right.
ever come back? Do we know that?
Well, I just said that.
Well, I know.
Does he not?
I don't know. I've done a bunch of research and can't figure it out. I do know
Well, scratch that from the line. Let's check that out.
I don't know. I'm gonna try to find out before this weekend. But I think it's incredible that
Well, don't throw me under the bus. If
I'm
wrong.
not gonna throw you under the bus. I said something wrong a few weeks ago. You didn't throw me under the bus.
Yeah.
That's part of it. But the incredible part about this is that this man, as you said, goes and does what Jesus wants to do.
Yeah.
And who wouldn't want to go with Jesus? He says, "Can I go with you?"
Yeah.
And Jesus says, "No, stay and tell everyone what Jesus has done."
Let me
for
tell
you."
you one of my favorite lines. If you know enough to be saved by
Oh,
the gospel,
don't say it.
you know enough to share the gospel.
I love
Oh man,
I love that.
I have a
Yes.
whiteboard that.
How did you come up with that?
You're gonna hear that at the end of the sermon. That's
That's his punchline for the sermon. I just wanted
I
to share.
will
it.
no
Thankfully,
longer.
this will air after the sermon. So.
No, it'll air before the sermon.
Oh, it will.
I will from now on start
but
erasing.
it's still pretty good.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm joking with you, but if you know enough to be saved, you know enough to share, and that's what this guy does.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting. I didn't even think about it until I just was reading the red letters there toward the end of this passage. And he asked for, can I go with you? And Jesus says, I don't need you to go with me. I need you to tell the people right here in your own hometown.
In your own hometown.
That's really important because, how many of us have said over the years, we're not sure we could ever, I don't know if I could go back to where I grew up now and say the things that would need to be said to convict and or tell people about Jesus, where they would go, wow, you're great. We'll just follow you and listen. But this man who had probably threatened many of them, who
Oh
had
yeah.
done many things, thrown things at them or whatever, robbed them. Now all of a sudden he's being expected to go back and tell people about Jesus and what Jesus did for him. So he gives this man a monumental task
Yeah.
that is just crazy to think about what he was being asked to
The
do.
best place to start in sharing the gospel is what it's done in your life.
Right. Yeah, no question.
And it's without a doubt, this is a transformative experience, this encounter with Jesus.
Right.
And I think that's the application for us is, I talk to people all the time, and I know all of you guys do, who say, I just don't know if I can say it. I don't know if I have what it takes.
Sure.
But it's like, man, you do.
Yeah.
Like you
Or
do.
they say something like, but those people know me.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the point.
And you
Yep.
know them. Yeah, the sermon last week or the sermon this week, however it's going to work out, the Sermon on the Mount,
Yeah.
as it goes, Jesus says, hey, there's a whole bunch of people here that need to hear about me.
Yeah.
And he says, blessed are you who do this, blessed are you who do this, woe to you who do this. And he says, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. Do all these things. And how many of those people are in our own neighborhood that just, some of them, we know they don't like us. Some of them we know don't even know us. And how big of a job is it just in my neighborhood, in my hometown, to go and tell the gospel? And he says, this is what I need you to do.
Mhm.
I need you from the beginning of his ministry to the end. He just says, go and make disciples.
Yeah.
So,
And Luke does an incredible job of just painting the transformation
yeah,
of this man from out of his mind to in his right mind,
yeah,
from demon possessed to follower.
yeah,
It's incredible.
yeah.
Good
Agreed.
stuff. All right. Well, that's about all we have time to talk about.
Yep, we're out of time.
And this nice story there on the Sea of Galilee. Well, join us next time as we ramble on through Luke on Location.